Good morning, fellow Zimbabweans, in particular the ZEP holders. As promised last week, today I'd like us to have a look at the waiver as offered by the Director General of the Department of Home Affairs in the second letter that's written to ZEP holders last week, and that was also published on media, as a notification to all the people. Now, I'd like us to look at the concept of, this particular waiver and see that what exactly it is that we deal with when we're dealing with this particular waiver. Now, the waiver is dealt with in the immigration regulations of 2014, that is regulation 28. Now, regulation 28 of the regulations, which deals with exemption, says that, regulation 29. 28 deals with exemptions in general, which basically deals with an application contemplated in section 31, subsection 2, paragraph B of the Act shall be made to the Minister on Form 47, and which is illustrated in Annexure A, supported by reasons for the application. That is an exemption similar to the one that we had, the ZEP permits. They are basically that kind of an exemption. And then the waiver is section 29, which says an application contemplated in section 31, subsection 2, paragraph C of the Act shall be made to the Minister on Form 48, illustrated in Annexure A, supported by the reasons for the application. Now, more often than not, you're looking at an application for a waiver for a requirement or a form as contemplated in the regulations. This is actually dealt with also in Form 48, which is the illustration or the example and the kind of form that has got to be completed. Obviously, I'm going to try and see if I can show you this particular form, which is Form 48, and it will show you that this is dealing with Section 31, subsection 2, paragraph C of the Immigration Act, read with Regulation 29. And it will give you the provisions or the circumstances under which these applications should basically be made. And it will also deal with some of the issues that we have to look at in particular, in applying for that particular waiver. Now, I think what we need to be very cognizant of is the fact that these waivers, as they are dealt with, you would not expect a waiver, unless there are extreme or circumstances that are very, specific, that one cannot qualify for. For example, if it's a Department of Labor waiver, the certificate, for example, if you are employed, you may find out that under the circumstances, such a waiver is done because the company has not made the advertisement, but they need to show that indeed, that job, your work is going to benefit the economy. And on the same note, that they were not able to apply, or when they applied, they are not able to get that particular, advertisement that they made on newspaper or on print media. But indeed, certain, requirements have been fulfilled. Now, in this particular case, we all know the circumstances surrounding, the exemption or dispensation permits and the conditions. And to require, this exemption will require that one is actually applying to get, not just one requirement, but all the requirements in the circumstances, obviously, waived. Now, let's look at this particular form that is in question here, Form 48. Now, Form 48 basically then, deals with it actually deals with a waiver for Section 31, subsection 2, paragraph C, as already stated, and Regulation 29, which will come with the first, your details, the visas that you've had, children that are accompanying you. And the most important part that I want us to look at is the Section 6, paragraph 6, which says sections of the regulation that must be waived. Now, and it gives you, an outline of if information is not true, what's going to happen. And then it then goes on to provide, where it says, please read the following, which says, in providing for the regulation of admission of foreigners to and their residence in the public, the Immigration Act number 13 of 2022 inter alia aims to promote economic growth through the employment of needed foreign labor, which does not adversely impact on existing labor standards and rights and expectations of South African workforce. Now, in light of the policy on the employment of immigrants, the immigration policy, and in light of what was said, in the non-extension letter that was read, by Minister Gungubele, which we're quickly going to look at. We just want to look at this briefly. So it says temporary residence permits. In order to satisfy the Director General that the issuing of a work permit to a foreigner would promote economic growth and would not be to the disadvantage of South Africans or permanent residents, documentary proof must be submitted that a diligent search had been done and the employer had been unable to employ a local candidate with qualifications or skills and experience equivalent to those of the applicant. This requirement is satisfied by means of an advertisement in the national printed media, which would afford South African citizens and permanent residents the opportunity to compete for the position. In terms of Section 31, subsection 2, paragraph C of the Act, the Minister may, for good cause, waive any prescribed requirement or form. Should a foreigner thus not be able to comply with the above requirements, he or she or the employer may request the Minister to exempt the applicant from submitting the relevant document or documents. The following documents have to accompany this application: A letter signed by the employer citing the requirements to be waived and a comprehensive motivation for each requirement. B, a copy of the applicant's curriculum vitae. C, a copy of the applicant's passport and all temporary resident permits affixed therein. D, a copy of the employment contract signed by both the employer and the employee. And then E, background on the company or institution for record purposes. Now, should the request be considered favorably, a letter will be forwarded to the applicant or his employer, which has to be submitted with the application and remaining requirements at the nearest regional office of the Department of South African Foreign Office if the applicant is still abroad. Now, if it's for permanent residents, again, there is a long list that has got to be, submitted. That is a letter, again, signed by the applicant citing the requirements to be waived and a comprehensive motivation for each requirement, copy of applicant's curriculum vitae, copy of the applicant's passport and all temporary resident permits affixed therein, a copy of the employment contract signed by both the employer and employee, if applicable, background on the company or institution for record purposes, business plan, bank or financial statements if applicable, recommendation from the Department of Trade and Industry if the application is made in respect of a business being conducted in the Republic. Now, what we need to particularly remember now, especially in view of this, is that we already know that the exemption or dispensation permit were issued because people were not in a position to meet the requirements of applying for these visas. But what is of great importance in this particular regard is to look at what was said by the Minister of Home Affairs and then read to the public or given in the statement, in November by Minister Gungubele, I think, where, for example, it was clearly stated the reasons, the issue in regards to the exemption permits, why they were not extended. So the statement of the Cabinet Minister on Wednesday, the 24th of November 2021. And if we then look at, I think that's going to be cabinet decisions, under cabinet decisions, which is part B, and that is paragraph 6, special Zimbabwe exemption permits, ZEP. Cabinet considered the much talked about ZEP and also noted the fake news being spread on these permits. The first Zimbabwean special dispensation started in 2009 and was called the Dispensation of Zimbabwe Permit. It provided for the documentation of qualifying Zimbabweans for a 5-year period. In 2014, the dispensation was extended by 3 years and called the Zimbabwe Special Permit. The current ZEP was initiated in 2017, comes to an end on 31 December 2021. Following its deliberations, Cabinet decided to no longer issue extensions to the Zimbabwe special dispensations. However, it decided on a 12-month grace period at the expiry of the current ZEP. During this period, the holders of this permit should apply for other permits appropriate to their particular status or situation. At the expiry of this 12-month period, those who are not successful, I want us to mark that and underline that, those who are not successful will have to leave South Africa or be deported. Now, it defeats the purpose, of the discontinuation of these particular permits if, again, all these requirements that could not be met in 2009 are not met now, and again, the same dispensation permit or the same permit will have to be issued. Because you either apply for a work permit, but if you're applying for a work permit, then it should be a temporary, permit, and it must meet the requirements that I just read under the regulations. Now, you must then motivate and show that why was the company not able to advertise and meet these particular requirements. And therefore, it means that again, the people are making applications, I mean, where the employer will have to sign and show why this has not been, done. And then if it's a business permit, you run a small business permit, the requirement is obviously to have 5 million, in your bank account, or, which has been brought into the country, for that business. If you cannot meet that, then it must be shown that why are you going to be allowed. And a lot of our people who are in the informal sector, don't make that kind of money. They do businesses that can also be done by South Africans, and they cannot comply with that particular requirement. And if they all have to apply, they need to give a motivation. I'm trying to think that what is the motivation that can be given. Maybe this is where we need to help each other. That what is the kind of motivation that will have to be given by the applicant to say, this is the reason why I cannot meet these particular requirements. And that motivation flies in the face of the non-discontinuation, because it actually then, contradicts the purpose of the discontinuation, which is given here, where the minister has then written a letter that was then posted, by the lawyers for Home Affairs, in the letter that, they wrote, and rather it was a statement, basically, where they wrote and showed that because of the needs of the South Africans, the level of unemployment that has grown by 1.8, it has become important that, the Zimbabwe exemption permits be therefore discontinued in order to provide, and cater for and relieve, the economic problems that South Africa is facing. Now, if we are therefore going to be saying we need to waive those conditions, how then does South Africa justify that, considering that, it means everyone will have to apply for an exemption? So is it just a mere process that means that you're going to be allowed in, and what are going to be the conditions at this particular stage? And how does that then, justify the initial discontinuation that was done? So the waiver definitely is something that is not going to work, because it is not going to overcome the problem that was raised, by Minister of Home Affairs and by Cabinet in the discontinuation process, or when this discontinuation, of the ZEPs, did take place. So the reason why the Department of Home Affairs is basically inviting people to apply for these waivers if they are not qualifying is because it wants to fulfill, to say, we have allowed them an opportunity to apply for the waivers and they've not been successful. And remember, each of these processes costs money, and it's a lot of money that's going to be made out of the migrants. You first apply for a waiver, you pay for that, then you go on, you apply for, if they say, okay, the waiver is fine, and they say, yes, we have waived this, but still, you have got other conditions that you'll need to, therefore meet. In the event that they say that you have managed to explain, motivate for, which I don't know if it is real possible. And the news that we're getting is that those that have applied for waivers have not been successful anyway. And even in its own letter, the department said 1,900, had applied for, waivers, and they had been rejected, prior to, making that announcement. So it means that they're not amenable, to those kind of waivers. I think if we look at the letter that was basically done by the Minister of Home Affairs, I think we are likely to come across that, where it says, just trying to find that, just going to see if this is the one that I have here. No, it's not the one. Trying to find this letter, what is that? Okay, there is a letter that was posted by Sikoko Incorporated, which are the lawyers that are now, are representing the Department of Home Affairs. Okay, and I want us just basically to have a quick, look at, that those circumstances around that particular letter, to understand exactly, what was raised, by the minister, and in this particular case, to understand that what exactly were the reasons that were given, for not, extending those particular, the ZEPs. Now it becomes just, quite important. Okay, this is for a particular individual. I thought I had seen that particular letter just a little while ago, and I just wanted to, at least, go through that particular letter so that, we can, hear exactly what has been said. But anyway, let me read the notices, because it's just basically one and the same thing which were posted, yeah, the notices that were on the Star and the Sowetan. So it basically goes on to say that, which is the same letter anyway. It says the decision of the minister was taken due to, inter alia, the following reason: the exemption granted to the Zimbabwean nationals was and has always been a temporary measure pending improvement of the economic situation in Zimbabwe. In 2008, approximately 200,000 people arrived in South Africa seeking asylum. The majority of them were Zimbabwean nationals. Again, in 2009, another 207 arrived also seeking asylum. Similarly, the majority of them were Zimbabweans. The extensive nature of asylum applications by Zimbabwean nationals between 2008 and 2009 overwhelmed the administrative capacity of the department's asylum seeker management unit, and resources were overstretched. The status had been exacerbated in prevailing years with an accumulation of appeals within the statutory body's responses for rejected or failed asylum. The department then encountered or brought what it did. And then let's look at 7.3. According to Statistics South Africa, Stats SA, quarterly labor force, quarter 2 of 2021, South Africa's unemployment rate increased by 1.8%, bringing the overall rate to 34%. This is the largest recorded since the start of the QLFS, that is the quarterly labor force reports in 2008. The DHA came to realize that some of the Zimbabwean exemption holders were violating the conditions, in that about 1,900 were somehow able to apply for waivers in terms of the Immigration Act. Their applications were rejected. So you can see 7.4 is very clear that some applied for waivers and they were rejected. I'm not sure if there's anything different that's going to make that possible. It goes without saying that a combination of factors led to the lawful, rational, and reasonable decision of the minister. Should any exemption holder have any representations to make regarding the non-extension of exemptions in the 12 months period, he or she may forward. That was just, the clause. This was on the 31st of December 2021 when this particular, advertisement or notice, in fact, was apparently signed, but it was published or issued on the 5th of January. We're not sure if indeed it was, done on the 31st, because 31st is the day when we were obviously in court. Now, so you can see that one of the issues that need to be, that needed to be dealt with here is the unemployment, levels in South Africa. That's what needs to be cured. And I'm not sure then if a waiver that flies in the face of trying to cure the unemployment, which says these people do not have special skills, but they are going to be nonetheless, allowed to continue on the same, basis as the initial, conditions that were in the ZEP, if it is therefore possible. So in my view, I think, what we need to understand, if waivers must be applied for, and we are trying to find out that from the department. We have already, written to them. The first important thing is that there needs to be a guarantee that these waivers are going to be a success, especially under the circumstances that, the exemption permit holders have, because the conditions of applying for, business for work permits and business permits were much less stringent in 2009, 2010 than they are after the 2014 amendments. They are much harder since the 2014 amendments of the Immigration Act. And now, to then think that, people are going to be able, to get a work permit, because there is no longer a general work permit in South Africa, as, shown to you last week. But what is there is a critical skills work permit. Now, if we no longer have a general work permit, what therefore, guarantee do we have that people are not just going to apply? There should have been, a dialogue between, holders and the department to say, yes, because of these reasons, please do your waivers in this particular way, because they already know what are the circumstances of the people. And when the people do apply, the only thing that I can foresee is somebody saying, look, I'm asking you to waive the requirements because I cannot meet those requirements because I've been working in South Africa for, this period of time, or with this particular company for so long, and I cannot go back to Zimbabwe because the economic conditions are hard. And, So my company could not advertise the job. I was given this job in 2009, because I was already working as a person who was not documented. So I don't think that's going to work. Now, on the same basis again, I run a small business, I sell tomatoes, or I do fittings in houses, and I'm a Zimbabwe exemption permit holder, but I cannot fulfill the 5 million, requirement and 700,000 to an NPO or an NGO of my, choice. And therefore, please waive so that I can continue, because I employ 3 or 4 South Africans in my company. I've created employment, and yet the business that you're doing can be done by a South African. So, colleagues, I'm not sure if that is really going to work, and this is where my concern is. So, an exemption, a waiver in this particular case is an initiative which wants these requirements or forms that must be submitted not to be submitted. And yet, we know that these are the key requirements, that needs to be fulfilled, and that is the soul of the 2014 Immigration Act change, and that is also the soul of the rejection of the non-extension that took place, on the 24th or 25th of November 2021. So how is that going to be possible for people to be able, to apply for these waivers successfully? Now, that is the question. So in this particular regard, we can all be rest assured that this is not going to happen, but we have already written to the department, and in the event that the department can respond to those requirements, because we were quite clear that what we require is to know if there are guarantees that those waivers are going to be given, and ultimately, the permits, because the department is aware of the circumstances of this particular group of people. It has been exceptional, and it still remains exceptional and of its own kind, and it needs to be treated in that regard. And one of the things that I need to mention is that they did quite well by mentioning that, the conditions in Zimbabwe, had to improve or had changed, but the conditions have not changed, they have not improved. People are still running away today, and people are still being, persecuted. And the reason at that particular stage was that people were running away from economic and political conditions that were not better. They are not better even today. So if that was the basis for the issuing of the dispensation permit, has that really changed to the extent that, the permits cannot be given? Those are the questions that we need to ask. So we want to continue, discussing these particular issues whilst, we're working on the court cases, and to help each other build a better, court case that has got all the chances, of basically, winning our people, these permits or permanent residence, so that they don't have to be thrown out of South Africa and lose their jobs because of this particular decision. Now, I'd like you to go onto the channel and please, subscribe to our channel so that you can keep on receiving these updates and knowing what is happening, and understanding and, asking questions so that we can help where we can, because many organizations and individuals are coming up, making people to pay money where there are no guarantees and where there is absolutely no surety, as to why that is happening, simply because they want to make money. So we want to try and keep that, because we know that we are all suffering and people are in all sorts of troubles, and now they would like, to make a meal, or basically to siphon, people's monies, simply because, people are desperate. Thank you for watching, and God bless.